What's going on, guys? We are back yet again, and we're going to be doing another review finally for your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man season review slash going over the latest episodes and the ones that I've watched. And I will say this: if you guys have seen the latest episodes, cool. Let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments. But also, if you haven't, then we will be going to spoiler territory. So if you don't want to be spoiled, just click off the video, come back, and let me know what you guys thought about the season. So going into the last few episodes, really where Peter got the white suit messed up due to fighting Scorpion, and then him trying to figure out if he's cut out to be Spider-Man, and Harry helping him make the classic red and blue Spider-Man suit. And I thought, honestly, it was cool. It was cool to finally see him return as the red and blue Spider-Man that we know and love and go up against Scorpion yet again, because we saw where between the 1/10 that, of course, Lonnie's part of, aka Tombstone, and him going up against Scorpion's gang, and they have this massive gang war in the middle of New York, and Spider-Man shows up, tries to stop it, and Lonnie is trying to help the so-called gang that he's in now, and when he's trying to go to the truck, you see where the one Don just abandons him because he almost got killed by Scorpion, and Lonnie goes in there, and there's a bunch of different stuff from Oscorp, not from Oscorp, but from Octavius, and what we see is Octavius has some type of gas or whatever, and Lonnie inhales it by accident, and I guess that's how he becomes his powers of Tombstone, because we see where he starts getting a bunch of different, like, strength, being impenetrable to different things, and helps Spider-Man go up against Scorpion, and he almost loses it. Spider-Man almost loses it when he thinks Lonnie's dead, because Lonnie gets really hurt going up against Scorpion. He just unleashes everything on Scorpion, and he almost kills him, but then he finally realizes that's not who he is, and Lonnie even tells him, like, this is not who you are. Like, you're a symbol of, like, to be a hero. Don't let this person do to you to become a bad person, because he was letting what Norman was telling him get in his head. And what we find out is also Norman was not as good as we think he was, because he was honestly using the blood of Spider-Man to put into different spiders, which we later find out in another episode when they use all the different things to open up an own portal where the Venom symbiote shows up again, or a version of the Venom symbiote shows up, and what we see is Strange shows up, they start fighting, and that's how it goes into the first episode of him going into the past, and what we see is him going up against Strange, aka Venom, and that's how when Peter gets bit by this spider. So it was in the future slash past that he became Spider-Man. That's how he gets his power. So I thought it was really cool to see that, and then also how Nico is, I'm not sure what character she is, but again, him and Nico were able to repair their relationship after she found out he was Spider-Man, after being able to deal with that, being able to become friends with Harry, Harry wanting to get away from Oscorp, start his own company, and then we also saw how one of the ones that was at Oscorp is actually working secretly for Daredevil. I'm not exactly sure who that is. So we see Daredevil again, we see even Octavius in prison, where he's working on the pictures to make the mechanical arms to become Dr. Otto Octavius now, or Dr. Octopus. Now we also, and that was cool, and what we also got to see a little bit from Easter eggs from this was also how Norman is still trying to work on different things to become powerful, and after the fight we see a glimpse of the goo from the symbiote, and Norman now is going to have access to that. And what we also see is, of course, May. This is what was really crazy. At the end of the season, May goes to a prison, and she comes in contact with Peter's father. So this version, Peter's father is alive, is in jail. So we don't know exactly the reasons why or how he's alive, but it's very interesting that now he is alive, but we don't know what exactly goes into of, like, why he's alive or how he's alive, other than he says, okay, how's my son doing? And then it ends with, of course, Peter swinging through the city, acknowledging that he's Spider-Man. Now, again, I thought that this season was okay. I do feel like that him trying to go over the one he had a crush on was just kind of not really needing to do Lonnie aka Tombstone. I didn't really understand what their reasoning was until they actually showed he was going to become Tombstone. So I started kind of like, okay, this is cool. Being able to show how Lonnie's personality is changing, how he's now become, I guess, the new leader of the 1/10th, how he got his powers, and how him and Spider-Man did go to defeat Scorpion, which I found cool as well. And I will say, a little bit of Easter egg for me is when, of course, Scorpion tried to attack Spider-Man and he got into an electrical box. It really reminded me of that scene from the old school Spider-Man in the 90s where he grabbed wires and electrocuted them that way. So it kind of reminded me of that. I found it kind of funny because I feel like that they mixed a lot of different things in the show, from the games, the movies, to the old school comics, to the TV shows, because I like seeing Octavius and Norman go at each other like we kind of saw in the game. But I like that. I like seeing Norman and Otto go up against each other, like who's smarter, who's the better, I would say, genius between the two. So if we do get another season, which we may, I would like to see what Octavius is going to be up to. Are we going to be seeing Norman become the Green Goblin or something else, or is it going to go back and forth? And again, I know why there's some people that did like this show, that did not like the show, whether it be because of the character designs or the the direction of the show or whatever. Me personally, I was not a fan of Harry's design. I was not a fan of that. That to me is just not Harry Osborn. Norman, it was kind of in between because I'm just so used to the animated version of the 90s version of Norman Osborn and a little bit of what we saw in the games and also a little bit in the movies. That to me is more Norman and Harry Osborn to me. Octavius, I thought Octavius looked good. Daredevil looked badass. The suits in Spider-Man was awesome. And then seeing Strange was cool as well. Captain America, even Iron Man here was cool as well. Seeing them make a few cameo appearances as well, bringing everything being brought up from Civil War to all the other things happening in the MCU. So it's somewhat similar to the main timeline, but this is a different timeline. But are we going to be in a season 2? I have no idea. I think we will be at some point. There's a lot of rumors. We could be seeing Gwen Stacy maybe, maybe Mary Jane. I hope we actually get an actual Mary Jane, not the Zendaya Mary Jane. I really hate that version of Mary Jane. I hope we get a decent version of Mary Jane, and that, you know, that we actually get a good, better love interest for Peter rather than the ones that they're already possibly portraying at this point, whether it be Nico or the other one that was his babysitter. I don't see those really being love interests at all. I just find those to be really just like, it's just there. But other than that, the show was okay. It wasn't the best. I will definitely recommend anyone that wants to watch this, just binge watch it all in one whack. That way you can just enjoy it, and then you can say if it's good, bad, or just not for you. That's fine. But me being a Spider-Man fan, I thought it was okay. Me being a very much purist of the 90s Spider-Man that I grew up on, and then also Spider-Man Unlimited, those were my bread and butter of what made me a Spider-Man fan, and the old school Spider-Man, in the, like, I want to say in the 60s, 70s, something like that, with like the whole Spider-Man. That one, I grew up on a little bit too. Spider-Man Friends, or Superpower Friends. I remember watching that. But my bread and butter was Spider-Man the animated series in the 90s. That was my jam. I loved that show. I will still love that show to this day. Probably the best Spider-Man version, in my opinion, ever. But I loved how they showed a lot of respect to the old school comics. I loved how they showed a lot of respect to the predecessors of the animated series, the movies, the games, to try to put everything into one for what everyone would kind of like. And I liked how they were able to develop the characters rather quickly than taking their time to be able to keep the pacing up. Now, again, like I said, was I a fan of the Lonnie character? No, but then when I realized it was Tombstone, I was like, okay, I like Tombstone. I like his origin. He's got a very interesting story. We don't know a whole lot about him. They don't really talk about him very much, so let's give it a chance. And then learning about Scorpion, and then possibly Rhino as well, and then also being able to learn more a little bit about how Norman's going to possibly become Green Goblin in this, and then Dr. Otto Octavius, and then who are we going to see next season? We're going to be actually seeing Rhino. Will we maybe seeing Shocker? Will we see maybe Mysterio? Will we see who else? Maybe Hammerhead, or maybe Hobgoblin, or the Lizard maybe at some point. But again, Seeing the female version of Dr. Connors, I just don't know how to feel about that. I'm just so used to the other versions of Dr. Connors. So again, I'm not sure how they're going to take that. Because again, they have a lot of different ways they could do this show, but hopefully they just do it right and they do it as, I would say, as good as possible, and not just kind of going on a limb and just find something out of their behinds and making something out of nothing to where it actually makes sense. But again, those are just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think of this series? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you want another season? Are you hoping we get another season? Let me know about it down in the comments, and I'll see you as always on the next one.